What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you had a great Valentine's Day, celebrating the Day of Love, and we got some pretty interesting but not surprising news, at least in my opinion, coming out of Athens, Georgia today. Former Bulldogs offensive coordinator Todd Monken's out. He's off to the NFL and going to be the next offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. And his replacement is going to be former UGA offensive coordinator Mike Bobo. He was there, I believe, from 2007 all the way to 2014. So he was there, during the Matthew Stafford days, Aaron Murray days, AJ Green. When you think of players like that, Mike Bobo was the offensive coordinator during those times. And I'm a little mixed about this. If I had to be completely honest with you guys, as a Georgia fan and what I've seen from a lot of Georgia fans, this is a big blow for Georgia. It's nothing new. Georgia's been through, I think, 3 or 4 offensive coordinators. 3, actually, since Kirby Smart's been there. We had Chaney, Coley, and then we had Monken. Obviously, a lot of us can go ahead and just say that Chaney and Coley were duds. They weren't good. I wasn't the biggest fan of those guys, but Todd Monken was probably by far my favorite offensive coordinator and probably the best offensive coordinator that the University of Georgia has ever had, if I had to be completely honest. What he was able to do with Stetson Bennett, and of course, he had a lot of talent to work with, but Georgia's offense, that was probably the best Georgia's offense has been ever. Mike Bobo, I'll get to him a little bit in a minute. He had some good offenses as well, but I don't think you can compare him and what Monken was able to do. And talking about Mike Bobo, a lot of people don't really like Mike Bobo. If you talk to a lot of Georgia fans, a lot of them aren't big fans of him from when he was the offensive coordinator back from 2007 to 2014. I personally don't think he was a terrible offensive coordinator. I think Georgia at that time was dealing with a lot more issues other than just offense. I think our defense was always very suspect at times too, and I think that's when Georgia struggled to win a lot of those big games under Mark Richt. Was not really primarily the offense, but the defense. Now, there were some games I can remember in my past where the play calling was really suspect, but you guys also have to remember too, this was Georgia. Georgia hasn't been, where they are now forever. I mean, you got to remember, I think from 2005 to 2017, Georgia wasn't even, they didn't win one SEC championship. A team that was recruiting well. They recruited some good players, but they weren't recruiting at the top or anywhere near the level they're recruiting at now. So obviously, that they weren't just winning and going to be competing with your Alabamas and all that from back in the day. And it was very apparent. And I think Mike Bobo is going to have a better time running this offense now. I think he's got a lot more talent to work with compared to what he had back in the day. Of course, he had some big-name players like Todd Gurley, and I mentioned all of them already. But from top to bottom, the talent on Georgia's roster now is infinitely better than the talent that Mike Bobo had to work with and Georgia had to work with way back in the day. And this isn't really surprising news for me either. I knew Todd Monken was going to head out. I was optimistic that we were going to be able to keep him. I really wanted to keep Monken for as long as humanly possible. But this is just something that when a program like a Georgia or an Alabama or any kind of program that has success for a long period of time and kind of puts themselves on top of the college football world, coordinators aren't going to stay very long. Coordinators are usually going to stick around for 2 years, 3 years. And the reason for that is because usually the NFL or some other team just throws out a head coaching or coordinator job that just pays a lot of money. And it's very hard to keep these coordinators around for a long time. Plus, if you looked at Monken's track history from other places he's coached, you would know that he doesn't really stay at places for a very long time. So, and honestly, I'm surprised he even made it through last season. I thought he was going to leave after Georgia won the first national championship back in 2021, but he stuck it out. I was hoping we'd be able to keep him again after this year, but it's expected. These coordinators they're hard to keep at big time schools. So, best of luck to him in the NFL. I have nothing against Todd Monken, what he did at Georgia. I think probably one of the most important pieces of the staff for Georgia to win those national titles. So, of course, I love the guy and I hope he does well in the NFL. Anyways, moving on. What does this mean for the University of Georgia? Well, I think it means a couple things. One, it's late. It's late to be having coaching changes like this. Usually you kind of want something like this to be settled, in January or December, or you see coaching changes happen all the way back in November. Scott Frost, you think he got fired in September. The point is, coaching changes, you want them to happen. If you know they're going to happen, you want them to happen as early as possible. And it's pretty clear that Kirby Smart already knew Mike Bobo was going to be the replacement. There was no drawn-out process, no interviews, no rumors of this guy coming or Georgia's going to interview this guy all the way over in California. You guys get the idea of what I'm saying. It's, as soon as Monken left, Bobo was the replacement, and I think that was known, of course, well in advance. It's late, though. Usually I think spring practice starts here pretty soon. I don't know the exact date for, I know each school is different with the way they do spring practice. But this is late, and when you have a situation where Georgia's in right now with Carson Beck. He's going to be a first-year starting quarterback. Every quarterback on Georgia's roster, whoever starts, I'm assuming it's going to be Carson Beck for this upcoming season. None of them started a college football game. Carson Beck, obviously the most experienced of the entire roster. So I'm assuming he's going to be the guy. Now, Carson Beck was obviously the backup to Stetson Bennett, but he's been practicing within Todd Monken's system. So I think Carson Beck had a really good understanding of Monken's offense. And Bobo was at UGA this past season. He was the offensive analyst or something. I forgot the exact job title he was. He was like a coordinator control or something. Quality control, that's what I was looking for. He's a quality control analyst for the offense. So him and Monken, basically what that is, just a second offensive coordinator is what Mike Bobo was, working with Todd Monken. So, of course, he's familiar with what worked and what didn't work last year. He kind of knows Todd Monken's brain, and I'm curious to see how much of Todd Monken's scheme that Bobo tries to implement. And I think that would be best for Carson Beck, a guy who's been practicing under Monken's system for a very long time. You don't want to throw this guy who's never started a college game into another system, and I don't think Mike Bobo is going to completely flip the offense around and change the identity of this Georgia offense, especially with the players they got coming back. And I don't think this is going to be a situation like 2019 LSU. If you guys remember that terrific offense, probably one of the greatest offenses of all time in college football, led by Joe Brady, Joe Burrow. Joe Brady was only there for 1 year, though, and you saw that it didn't stick in the year after that when Joe Brady left. It takes a couple of years, I think, for a scheme to really get installed into a team, and I don't think Georgia's case. I think Todd Monken's been there, he's been there a few years, so he was able to install a lot of things, and I don't think Georgia's going to go away from that right away. But we'll see. I honestly just don't know. I say a lot of this stuff because I don't know what Mike Bobo's plans are, Kirby Smart's plans are. I'm not within the team meetings. I'm not in the facilities. I don't hear what's going on there. This is all just kind of an educated guess. But with the players that Georgia has coming back, a lot of these guys are familiar with one system. Carson Beck, a first-time starter, or soon-to-be first-time starter. You don't want to change a system up on this guy this late, especially with spring practice coming up here in a few weeks. So as far as what I think's going to happen, I have no idea. I know what Mike Bobo was doing, and I know what he's done in his first, run at Georgia from 07 to 14. I think he was a pretty decent offensive coordinator, and he did put up some good numbers. And he did put up some decent numbers at Colorado State. Obviously, his record doesn't show that. But if you look at the offensive stats for Colorado State, when he was there, Colorado State was getting some production. So he knows what he's doing. He's been in the college football world forever. He actually played at UGA in the mid-'90s. He was a quarterback there. Him and Kirby Smart played together. So I'm sure that had something to do with Bobo getting the job. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. What do you think about this change? What do you think about this replacement? Are you surprised that Todd Monken left? Just anything you guys can think of, leave it down below in the comments and discuss it with me. I'll be looking, I'll reply. And what's your expectations for Georgia this year? I don't think, as a Georgia fan, I don't think Georgia fans need to be going ahead and throwing away the season. I still think Georgia's going to be the consensus number one heading into this year. And there's so much talent on that Georgia roster, it's hard to think that Georgia's just going to completely fall off the face of the earth on the offensive end. Obviously, we've seen some Georgia teams under Kirby Smart, most notably under Jake Fromm. Those offenses struggled a lot, and you saw where Georgia paid the price in a lot of those games where they would play another elite offense. And a lot of times nowadays, Georgia, defenses don't win you championships like that anymore. Of course, 2021 was an outlier. Georgia had a generational defense, but you need an elite offense in today's college football if you want to win national titles. And, Georgia's had that the past couple of years, too. Primarily last year. I can't really say 2021 was an elite offense, but you guys kind of get the point of what I'm saying. Anyways, I'm getting a little long-winded here. Please discuss in the comment section anything you want to talk about Georgia and this coaching change, and I'll see you all in the next one.